Hi, welcome to In Air's Kitchen. Oops, we gotta make sure it's going live. We haven't had one of these issues for a while. It looks like it's good. All right, so we're gonna make enchiladas today. It's Cinco de Mayo. Violet's gonna help me out. She's right around the corner somewhere. If you want to follow along at home, you're gonna need some corn tortillas. We have some left over from the other day when we made tortillas, so if you're making yourself, you just need masa. We had an episode earlier on in the show where we went through how to make tortillas at home, and if you haven't done it, I'd encourage you to. They don't cost a lot to buy them at the store, but when you make them yourself, you get to choose exactly what goes into them, and they taste delicious. What is it, Tulip? You want to go outside? So you're going to need corn tortillas, and then, and I think I found it works a little better if they're sort of left over from a previous day rather than making them fresh. You're going to need tomatoes, and this is going to be a can of tomatoes, so like a 26 or a 28 ounce can. Any kind of tomatoes, as long as it does not have basil in it, it's going to work fine. Cumin is a really critical ingredient. You can't make this taste like enchiladas with this red sauce we're going to make without the cumin. And we're going to have onion. You can fill these with anything you want, really, but I'm going to use some spinach I had in the freezer, and so today we're going to use spinach, and we're also going to use some cheese, and you want something that's melty. So cheese. We're going to use a cheddar cheese, but you don't have to use cheddar. You could use something else. Tulip really wants to get under there. There must be like a ball or something that fell under the table. Maybe we'll help her out in a little bit. There's going to be some salt and green onions. Sorry about all the squeaks. Green onions or chives. And you're going to need a little bit of oil. All right. So this recipe, I might give you quantities. I'll give you quantities for the tomatoes and the cumin. I might give you a count on the tortillas. But a lot of this is going to be sort of to feel or what you need. I think of enchiladas, I don't want to offend anybody, but I think of it as like a Mexican lasagna a little bit. We are going to construct it in a similar way. So if you haven't made enchiladas before, but you've made lasagna, that might be helpful to you. And in the same way, like there's a lot of different ways to put your lasagna together. There's some critical ingredients though. I wouldn't try to make this without the cheese, and you need to have the tortillas, the tomatoes, the cumin, and then the rest of it you can play around with a bit. So that's the plan. We're going to make that today, and then we'll make, I have some black beans. So black beans, this is, we did a previous episode on that, so you can go back and look at that episode if you want to know how to make those beans. We're using some really beautiful beans from Charlie Bear. I'll talk a little bit about those, and then we're going to make some radishes on the side. So like a little radish salad on the side, and I was able to get some really beautiful watermelon radishes. These are locally grown, and also some cabbage. So and the onions are locally grown as well. So it seems a little bit crazy. We're at this hardest time of the year if you live in New England. The new stuff hasn't come up yet, except like chives and herbs. But we're going to make this with some spinach that came from Linden Tree, farm down the road, some onions that came from the same, watermelon radishes that were locally grown, and some cabbage, and red onion that is also locally grown. The cumin seeds are not, although I've always thought it'd be fun to grow these. And then the tomatoes, I'm using these canned tomatoes because we've run through most of our own tomatoes. And the cheese is from Vermont. So this is like northeast version of a delicious Mexican meal. And those beans are from Maine. So, you know, it's, believe it or not, we're actually making this with a lot of ingredients that were built in this area. And it's going to taste really, really yummy. So this is a pretty straightforward a recipe I'm going to show you guys. I love enchiladas. I think when my dad made them when I was a kid, they were the spiciest thing I'd ever eaten. And it was so yummy, I would take another bite and then it burned my mouth, and I would take another bite and it burned my mouth. And so that's a lot of my memory of enchiladas, but I always really liked them. And I think he made them, he bought like an enchilada sauce. And I think at some point I started playing around, learning a little bit more about cooking and about Mexican cooking specifically, and about enchiladas and sauces and stuff. And what we're going to do today is pretty much what I'll do at home if I'm going to make enchiladas, and I think I'll show you a few tricks of things that I think matter a lot, and we'll end up with something that tastes really, really delicious. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with some spices, and I've got some dried peppers here, and I still like to have this a bit spicy. What we're going to do is we're going to toast these guys. So I've got the oven hot already, which I'm going to need to put the enchiladas in the oven. So if you don't have a hot oven at this point, you'd want to heat it up. And I'm going to break one of these peppers, these dried peppers, and I'm just going to take out most of the seeds. I'm not worried about taking out every single little seed, but I'm going to take out most of the seeds. And I can tell there's some real heat in that. I'm going to put back a few pieces because I can even tell from here that it's hot. Clementine, my daughter, isn't a huge fan of spicy. And you can see all the seeds that came out of that one. And so I'm not overly concerned with the seeds. I try to knock out the ones that are obvious. But if a few get in there, it's totally okay. The seeds are a little more bitter than the rest of the pepper. And that's the reason you'll find a lot of recipes and a lot of cooks will try to avoid them. So you can see here, this pepper is a little more leathery, which they are sometimes. And I'm just going to break this up and put that in there as well. And then cumin. So I'm going to do, I would say, let's say it's a teaspoon, maybe it's going to be 2 teaspoons of cumin. So 2 teaspoons of cumin. And this is what we're going to toast. Okay, so I'm just going to put this in the oven, and we're going to keep an eye on that. I don't want it to overcook. So we'll probably look at that in 2 or 3 minutes and take a peek, and then pull it out when we think it's ready. Grab a bowl here I can use for compost. Throw that pepper stem away. So there's some dry peppers. If you don't have what I've got here, I mean, some of these peppers are from my garden. Some of these are from a farm that we work with at Clover a lot called Kitchen Garden. They make an awesome hot sauce, or a bunch of awesome hot sauces if you haven't bought from them before. But if you don't have these peppers, one, you could order them. But if you're trying to make this tonight and you don't have these, you could just use a chili powder. That will work fine. You could use fresh peppers if you have jalapeno or something like that. Habanero. Just keep in mind how spicy that pepper is. You're going to make that sauce spicy like the pepper. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the sauce started. And so the sauce is really, really simple. This is like the third really simple tomato sauce we've made on the show. We made one. We made one for when we made pasta. We made pesto when we made pasta. Sorry, we made one when we made the first tacos, like a salsa rosa. And we're gonna make we made a really simple tomato sauce when we did pizza. And we're gonna make another really simple one today. This is gonna be very similar to those other tomato sauces. The big difference here is that we're going to have the toasted cumin and the pepper. And you'll be amazed, as soon as you taste it, it's gonna taste like it's in a totally different space. And it's gonna taste really appropriate for this meal. But it's not that different than the other sauces we made. So if you've made some of those other sauces, you're gonna be okay here. So I've gotta break open these onions. And we've done this a lot on the show, but I'll just go through again what I do. Have a nice claw, so I can cut my fingertips. I'm going to spin that around. I'm going to cut the other side off, and now I have a nice firm, solid way to hold it. And then I'm going to cut it through the middle. I'm going to use that moment where I've got these 2 halves to pull off the parts of the skin that are no good. And since I'm doing a couple onions at a time right now, I'm just going to go ahead and continue the exact same process with both of these other onions I have. So again, I'm going to peel that skin off while it's in its half spot. And we've got one more onion here. This one's for later in the show. So I've got my onions ready to go here. And now the first onion I'm using is for the tomato sauce. The second one I'm going to use is going to be for the filling for the enchiladas. So I'm going to point the root side away from me. This is the root side. It was, you can see this is going to grow a little green shoot up there, and that's the root that would be facing down. So I'm going to face the root side away from me. And when I'm cutting this, if you haven't seen this method before, I'm cutting it so that it doesn't go all the way through. This way that last little bit of the onion holds it all together for me, so I don't have to struggle with all the pieces falling apart. And now I'm going to go ahead, so this is just being diced up. And we're going to put this in a little bit of oil, and this is going to be background for the sauce. Okay. And get some of those large pieces at the end broken down. All right. And the pan over here has gotten to a nice temperature, so it's pretty hot right now. I'm going to put a little oil down there, and we'll bring these onions over. This is a starting point for a lot of things you've seen on the show. I think it's the starting point for a lot of cooking at home, a lot of cooking at restaurants, a lot of different cuisines around the world. Onions are a really wonderful way to build flavor. I'm just getting myself a wooden spoon. So there's probably a tablespoon of oil in there, maybe something like that. I might put a little bit more in. And I want to have some fat later in the sauce, so it's not bad to add it at this point. And I want to cook these until they're sort of translucent in color. Maybe a little bit of color, a little bit of browning on them, but not a lot. So those are part of the way there. Not quite done yet. You could put garlic in at this point, and I probably would if I had a lot of garlic. I'm a little bit short on garlic right now, but it would be yummy. And without it, it's fine, but if you want to add it, it would be yummy too. Okay, and now I've got the tomatoes here. And while those onions are cooking, I'm just going to come over here to my blender. Oops, a computer, because I've had a lot of explosions in blenders over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this entire can of tomatoes in there. I'm going to want a little bit of water in there too, and I just rinse out the tomato taste in the can. I'm going to check on my cumin. All right, it's looking really good. So. The cumin's like changing color a little, but it's not like blackened. And the pepper is also fine. It's not overcooked. You can see it still has some of its peppery color, but it's been toasted a little bit. So these are both really nice. And I'm just going to take them out of this pan because I like how they're cooked right now. If I leave them in that hot pan, they're going to continue cooking. So I'm going to get them out of there so they'll stop the cooking process. And more there. All right, and we're going to grind those up in a couple minutes, but I'll just get this tomato sauce finished here. So this sauce is going to be, we're just blending this up. You can do whole tomatoes. These were diced. You could start with a puree. There are minor differences in them, but for this sauce, they're all going to be great. Now I went to a pretty high speed on that, and if you have a less robust blender, you just want to blend a little longer. But I've made it into a pretty watery puree. That's what I want for this sauce. And it looks sort of white because that blender was going so fast, I actually put a bunch of air into it. But it's going to turn out really well. You'll see that the whiteness will go away as it cooks. I'm just rinsing out the blender to make sure I catch all the tomato goodness. So we're not going to cook this for a very long time, but we're going to let it go a little bit here. And what it means is that when we assemble these, all the different components we're using, the tomato-based sauce, and the filling, they're all going to be hot already. So the enchiladas are basically all going to be cooked. But when they go in the oven, all the flavors will meld, and we'll see it's going to bake together really nicely. But nothing's really raw that we're going to put in there. All right, so we're going to come back here and do the spices now. So I've got a mortar and pestle, and I'm just going to go ahead and crush those spices up. So I've got in here the cumin and peppers. And as I said earlier, if you don't have peppers at home, you could use something else. But the cumin's really essential. I don't know how to get this recipe to taste right without the cumin. Alright, I'm just about there. And the cumin smells amazing. It's got this really fragrant, toasty cumin smell. It smells awesome. And so we're going to go ahead and put that in there. I'm holding back a little bit of the peppers because I don't want this to be too spicy for Clementine. Alright, so we're just incorporating some of those spices into that sauce. I'm going to add some salt to this. We do want to season this. This is going to be the sauce that we use to make the enchiladas, so we need to make sure it tastes delicious. I'm like out of spoons. I'm going to use a funny little spoon. It's just because nothing special about this. I just mounted the other kind. I think they're in the dishwasher. It tastes really, really yummy, and I would like it spicier, but I'm afraid that if I put too much more spice in it, Clementine may not even be able to eat it, so we're going to compromise on that. But it's not without any spice, and the chance that she'll say this is even too spicy to eat, so we'll see how it comes out. Some people are a lot more sensitive to spice than others, and I appreciate that. I didn't grow up with much spice in my house, so I was very sensitive to spicy foods for a long time until Brooke got me into eating Tabasco, and then I learned to eat spicier foods. So I'm gonna taste this again. It tastes really, really yummy. So the salt's right in the right spot. With salt, you don't want to overshoot it. So I went pretty quick. I may have even done that in one shot, but I've done this a lot of times, and I think I have a good sense of how much I want in there. If it's the first time you've done it, I would start with a little bit of salt, mix it, taste it, add a little bit more. You would hope that the first few times you haven't had it enough, and that leaves you the room. If you put too much salt and you overshoot it, it's really almost impossible to get back to where you want to be. So be cautious and careful with the salt. You can see the color and the look of this is already starting to change. And that's just those bubbles are all disappearing, and the tomatoes are starting to change color a little bit as they cook. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the spinach ready. This is our filling for the enchiladas. So just like the lasagna, a lot of the work goes into the sauce and the filling, and then assembling the thing itself is really fast and easy. So I'm going to get some heat on that back burner, and for the filling, I'm going to put a little bit of color on these onions. So I'm cutting them deliberately a little bit fatter in these bands, and I'm gonna put them at a nice high temperature and try and get a little bit of color on them. Maybe I'll bring it forward to this burner, which will be less noisy and you can see it a little better. Okay. So I've got some oil on the bottom of the pan. I want that to get hot enough that when I put the onions in, they're gonna go sss. Give that a second. And if you're wondering what temperature it is, you can always test by flicking a little water in the oil, or you take a little piece of whatever you're going to put in and drop it in. You can see that one's not bubbling right now, so it's not at the temperature I want it to be at. We just need to give it a second. I'm going to give myself a little glass of water while we're waiting for that. This is all done live in real time, so alright, it's getting up there. I can hear it starting to sizzle a little bit. We go ahead and put these onions in. Now if you put anything in a pan when it's too cold, a few different things happen. The oil will penetrate the vegetables in a different way. it'll get more saturated and soggy with oil. Whereas if you have enough heat, there's steam coming out of the vegetables that's matching up with the oil and keeping it from saturating. The other thing that'll happen is you'll often get stuff sticking to a pan. So if you have a lot of problems with things sticking to pans, sometimes it might be because you're putting stuff in there when it's cold. So if you have it hot enough, you won't have as many problems with that either. So those onions are getting started. And what I have here is some spinach. There's like always a time of year when we're getting a lot of spinach in our CSA, which we love, but it's like more than we can eat. And what I'll do then is I'll take some of that spinach and I'll wash it and dry it, and then I have this vacuum sealer, but you could do this with Ziploc bags, and I'll pack them into these bags, just washed and dried, and then put it in the freezer, and then I can have a beautiful day like this in May, and there's not any fresh spinach for me to get right now, but I can have a really nice meal with that spinach from the freezer. So we usually have a bunch of those in the freezer. We're probably getting a little bit low right now. Alright, so the temperature is running higher on these than it was over there. So they're going past that translucent stage to a little more caramelization of the sugars in the onion. You can see it's gaining a little bit of color right now, which is great. That's what I wanted to do. So I'm happy to see that. I'm going to give it another minute or two before I add the spinach. Because the spinach, when it goes in there, will bring the temperature down. I'll sort of halt that caramelization process. My enchilada sauce is looking really, really yummy. There's different kinds of enchiladas you can make. These are red sauce, but you can make green enchiladas, which are really yummy, with tomatillo. I don't have any tomatillo right now, so I'm not doing that. But at the end of the summer, when we get some tomatillo, we'll probably make some of those. And you can also make like a mole enchilada, which is really yummy, but not a sauce that we're making right now. This is a really simple, straightforward one. These onions smell really, really good. I think if anybody comes to the house, they're going to start getting hungry. But it looks like I'm like solo on today's show. I think it's such a beautiful day out. I can't blame the kids for wanting to be outside. And while I'm waiting for these onions, it's a good moment for me to catch up a little bit with what you guys can expect on the show. And trying to figure out what the right frequency is going forward. We've been doing this 5 days a week since I've been shut up in my house. And so every day at 4 o'clock we've been doing the show. And this is episode 28, so we have a lot of footage now, which is awesome. It means there's a whole catalog of shows you can go back and watch. We got through a lot of the basic recipes I was really hoping to hit up. There's still a lot of things I want to show people, but I think what we might do is move to a lower frequency of doing the show. And I think that will give us a chance to do a good job preparing you all for what's going to come, because I really would love to have a better opportunity for people to follow along, and I think with 5 of these a week, that's harder for people to do. And we also don't have the time to promote it and let you know what you need to buy and prepare and have. So I think we could do a better job of that if we had fewer shows a week. And the other thought I have is we could do a better job promoting some of the suppliers we would love to direct you guys to. And so I think we might move to a lower frequency of the show, so still be doing the show, but maybe 1 or 2 episodes a week instead of one every single day. I've had some requests for iced coffee. I think next week we're going to put together a show where we're going to talk about iced coffee. We might invite George Howell back again, talk a little bit about how to grind coffee at home, which I think will be a lot of fun for folks. It's getting warmer outside. I know I'm starting to enjoy iced coffee, and I thought that might be a fun show to do next week. And if you have other requests, let us know what they are. But the total frequency is probably going to go down a little bit, just to let you all know what to expect there. Alright, so this is really simple. We've got the spinach in here. There's 2 things going to happen here. One, we're going to heat the spinach up. And the second thing is we need to get some of that moisture out. There's not really anything else we're aiming for right now. So we want to get some of the moisture out. You can see all that moisture. And we want to get it hot because it was a little bit frozen. Once we get those things achieved, we're going to be done with this. You could have added garlic in here. Like I said before, I don't have a lot of garlic, so I didn't do that. And you could use some other kind of filling if you had it. You could do zucchini at a different time of the year. But right now we're working with what we have, which is the spinach. So we've got the sauce ready, we have the filling ready, and now we're going to get the tortillas ready. Right. So I've got here a tortilla we made the other day. These are corn tortilla. Clementine and Violet made these out of masa. And now you can see right now, there's a little flexibility to this tortilla, but it's a little bit brittle. I could probably break it. There we go, if I bend it. And what we're going to do now is we're going to heat it up, and we're going to do two things. We're going to heat it up. It's going to make it a little more flexible, and it's also going to we're going to heat up in oil, and so it'll make it a little bit waterproof, which will keep them from getting soggy when we're baking them. So I'm going to put some oil in this pan. When we made the tortilla fresh, we did them on a dry griddle, and at this point, we actually want them to be in oil. This is the pan I'm going to make the enchiladas in, so I'm just getting that ready to the side here. I'm waiting for this oil to heat up, and it's getting close. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a tortilla on that, so it's still heating up. I have my sauce right here. We're going to go ahead and put a little bit of that down. So we're just going to start with a little layer of the sauce. Now you can see my tortilla starting to cook in that oil. So this is like, we're heating it up in the oil, but we're not doing a full fry in the oil. Like, we're not trying to get it crispy and hard. We're just trying to get it to a stage where it's like softer. And that looks like a lot of oil, but we're going to go through this whole stack of tortillas. So I tried to put enough oil that they'll all be able to work through it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the next tortilla on top of the first one, and I'm just going to flip that. And I'm going to keep doing this with all the different tortillas. So we're going to end up working through this whole stack. So I'm going to go ahead and flip that again. Remember, we're not trying to deep fry these. We're just trying to warm them up a little bit and get some oil on them so that they're not going to get soggy when we're cooking them up. Okay. So let's get another one on here. And by doing it like this, with this stack, I'm going to achieve a few things. I'm going to keep them all warm. It's also a place for me to put the tortilla. But it's going to do a good job keeping them all warm and also getting the oil spread real evenly. So get another one ready here. I'll bring that. Need a little more oil. So these are going to be, once it's hot enough, they're going to be like 15 or 20 seconds each side, something like that. It's not very long. That one didn't cook as much as I needed to. I'm just going to flip it over and see if it's happier on the other side. So altogether, this is just going to be a couple minutes of flipping the stack of tortilla until I get to a place where I feel like they've all been heated enough and have enough oil on them. And then we're going to start building this. I don't know how many I usually use. I would guess it's probably about 10 or so. Let's see how many we have right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so. I'm just going to check on that spinach. It's looking good, but it's got a lot of moisture in it still, so we just need to steam some of that off. And I have some grated cheese. If you don't have the grated cheese yet, this is a good time to grate some cheese. Put another one of these guys down. Alright, so they're coming out really nicely. You can see it's flattening out. Now I've got a lot of flexibility in that without it breaking, which is great. So it's like a moist, sort of almost elastic kind of feeling, which is just what I want. Now I turned the heat down a little because you can start to see a little smoke coming out. I don't need it to be quite that hot. And you can see they're coming up a little dry right now, so I'm going to add a little more oil in there. And probably just one or two more of these, and we're going to be all ready to go. It's getting pretty close. This is probably the last one I'm going to do. Now, just going to save the rest of these for another day. Alright. And this sauce is all ready. My spinach is still pretty wet, so I'm just trying to boil off all that liquid. We may have to run through a colander. I might not be able to get enough of it off right there. Go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn off the heat on those tortilla. And this is just a colander. There's still quite a bit of water on the spinach, and I don't want to wait here for 20 minutes for it to come off. So try that. So the spinach is entering a spot that I was hoping to see, and I'll be able to share this with you. So you see now there's a little bit of water still, but it's starting to bubble up when it hits the pan. There's not as much anymore, so it's getting more dry. And that's about where I'd want to get it to. If you're using fresh spinach, it's going to be sort of the same thing. If you're using canned frozen spinach, it's going to be just like this. So we're going to work with these guys now. And there's two ways to do this. So I used to always make enchilada by rolling up each one, so putting some filling in it, rolling it up, and doing that. Lately, I've just been making them more like this, just laying them out flat. I think that's just a point of preference. I've been enjoying it this way, so I'm going to do it this way today. But if you would like to at home, at this point, they should be really flexible, and you could roll them up really nicely with filling inside of them, and line them up like that. But we're just going to lay them out like this today. So I'm going to get a little bit of overlap there. Okay, so I've got a layer of my tortilla, and I'm looking at that. I think I used a lot of them, so I think I may have underestimated how many I need. So I'm going to throw a couple more on the pan here. I think I'm going to need 2 more. All right, now I'm going to come to the spinach filling, and just going to go ahead and put this in here. All right, so as you're saying, if it was a different time, if it was summertime and you had summer squash, zucchini, that would be really delicious filling. A lot of other things you could use, carrots, potatoes, be really yummy in there. But we're just using spinach and onions right now. And now I'm just going to go ahead and create a layer across the top here as well. I think I got the number right. Or maybe I'm still one short. So one more. And then once we get the last ones on there, we're going to go ahead and douse them in some sauce. When our families, our extended families over, or friends are over, we often make meals that can just come out of the oven. So this is a great example of that. The salad we're going to make with the radishes is the kind of thing you can make way in advance. And when this comes out of the oven, it's not that, you can wait a little while, you can eat it right away. And I think those are great meals when you have people over, when you're entertaining. Obviously not what we're doing so much right now, but a nice thing to think about. So we're gonna go ahead and just put the rest of the sauce on. I'm just going to spread that around, get that in all the cracks. And now I could have put some cheese in the layers in between, but I'm just going to choose to put it all on top. This is preference. You could do it a different way. I like the way the cheese gets on the top. As it bakes in the oven, it'll get bubbly and then it will get a little bit brown. And the cheese inside wouldn't do that, so I saved all the cheese for the top. But you can do that any way you want. And then last thing I'm going to do, I have some chives Violet just picked for me outside, and green onions, scallions could work for this too. Okay, and that's about what I want to do with the enchilada. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven. My oven's at 400 degrees right now, and that's a fine temperature, so I'm going to let it cook at that temperature. And remember, everything in there is already cooked. There's nothing really raw, so what we're really looking for now is for that cheese to get melty and bubbly, and we're looking for the flavors to melt together. And that's often the case with casseroles, things you're baking. You're often assembling things that are mostly cooked. Okay, so we're going to move on now and do a little radish salad to accompany this. This is a fun thing I wanted to show everybody. So this cabbage, it may look to you like it's rotten there. This is something I would probably have been nervous to use in the past, but there's nothing wrong with this cabbage, and this is a local cabbage, and it's just that we're toward the end of the season. And the nice thing about cabbage is they have these layers, and as you peel off a couple pieces of skin, you get to something really clean underneath. And I'm going to hack off that root side. And sometimes when you buy cabbage in the grocery store, this may have already been done in the store in order to sell it, and you may just not know they did it. But I definitely would, with this kind of a vegetable, don't throw it off just because you see a little bit of mold somewhere. It's probably could be used and may even be really delicious. Now, when I open up the cabbage, this is a small one, but I'll show you my method. I'm going to quarter it, and then I'm going to come down, and I'm going to take that core out of each of these. So that part of the cabbage is going to be very delicious. And then what we'll do here, this is a very sharp knife, so a lot sharper than that. This is a Japanese vegetable knife. And I'm just using that. I have a little more control of the size of the cut. And I'm basically just shaving this for the salad that we're making. We're going to do something really simple with the salad. We're just going to use this cabbage that I still had, and we're going to use these radishes. And so like the last of our winter stores. I've got a couple potatoes left and a couple onions left, but we're really getting down to the very, very last of it. And let's do this last one here. Okay. All right. We've got the cabbage ready there. I'm going to go ahead and slice up some onion also. I'm going to keep it sort of fine. When you use a really sharp knife with red onions, they're so beautiful. And the other knife is sharp, but it's not quite as razor sharp as this one. and it would mush those layers between each other a little bit more. It's really, really pretty like this. All right, those are very beautiful red onions. We gotta get a bowl for all this. Okay, and then I have my watermelon radishes. And again, you know, a little bit about vegetables, because I think, you know, 8 years ago or 10 years ago, before I knew more, I may have been nervous about these, you know, these scarrings and the black. Nothing wrong with this. This is gonna be delicious. It's not gonna hurt you. This is really natural for something that's been in the refrigerator or in a bag or in a basement or root cellar over the winter. I'm just gonna give these a little scrub. I always want to wash all my vegetables before I use them. So give that a little scrub, and then we're going to go ahead and do something similar in this to those other guys. Take off the top and the end. Now we have a stable flat end to have it on, and then went down through it and cut it. And now I've got these very beautiful half moons I can cut. This is a watermelon radish, and if you haven't plated these before, as you can see why it's called a watermelon radish really easily. They're just spectacular. It's so beautiful. If anybody has any questions today, just let me know. I'll do my best to answer them, even though Blue's not here. Usually our question guy. All right, so we have all these beautiful radishes in there. I'm gonna put some more in. You can play around with different shapes to cut these in. This is, I really like for this particular radish, I think that these half moons are really pretty. But if you have these half moons too thick, they'll be a little bit cumbersome to eat. So you really want to get that pretty thin. But that thickness is going to be really nice. We're going to put a little bit of vinegar in there, and that'll break that down nicely. So let's do one more. And of course, every time you're working with a really sharp knife, you want to respect that blade and make sure you're using a good claw. Now see this part of the radish right here, I just noticed there's some little black spots there. I'm just going to go ahead and cut them off. There's nothing wrong with the radish. This little spot right here I was noticing carried through. I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off as well. And these are little subtle tips, but I think there's definitely a time for me where I look at something like that and not know what to do with it, or think I had to throw it away. And probably a lot of really delicious, nutritious vegetables that have been thrown out because people didn't know what to think of them. And the reality that it's totally fine what we're looking at. In a lot of cases, you can just trim whatever the offending issue is. Okay, so here's the rest of my watermelon radishes. Now, almost done with this salad. I'm gonna grab some of these chives that Viola picked for me. And these chives, I'm just cleaning those up so I have a nice clean edge, bunching them in my hand. Add those in. And let's add some salt to this. And I can start to smell that enchilada. It smells really good. So add some salt to that. And I'm going to add a little vinegar. And I have some chilies here. This is a company called Burlap and Barrel. Really wonderful spice company there in Brooklyn. There's a really wonderful spice. There's a couple really wonderful spice companies in Boston. There's one called Curio Spice, which is terrific, and we work with them in Clover. There's another one, and they're over on Massachusetts Avenue. So I'm just gonna put vinegar of that. And there's another spice shop called Christina's, which is very close to where our commissary is, and we've been working with Christina's for years as well. This bowl is a little small for the size I made the salad, so instead of making a mess, I'm just going to switch the bowl I used earlier. Okay. This is a super simple salad and dressing. I'm going to put a little bit of sugar in here, not a lot, so I don't want it to taste like sugar, but I think that'll balance the vinegar in a nice way. And I'm just going to mix all this in. So I've got vinegar in here, I've got some pepper, chives, I have some salt. Making a simple late spring salad, they call it. It's not quite a vinaigrette because I'm not intending to add any oil to this. If I wanted to go a fattier direction with the dressing, I think I would probably use mayonnaise. That might be really yummy, do something with peppers and mayonnaise. But I think today this is going to be like a very fresh and light feeling with those enchiladas. All right, so the salt and the vinegar are actually breaking this all down a little bit, and it's gonna soften up some of those things that would otherwise be a little tough in there. Sort of like cooking them in acid. So I'm gonna dive into a little bit of this and see what it tastes like. See if I need to make an adjustment. It's really good. The pepper is really nice addition. It's not a very spicy pepper, and it brings some fruitiness to it all, which is really yummy. And having the onion and the chives, I think, is really nice too. Adds like a little bit of intrigue in the oniony flavor. So this is great. I'll go ahead and put this back in the bowl I was originally using. It's a little better serving bowl. That looks awesome. I'm very excited about that one. And the nice thing about this kind of salad, I'm calling it a salad, but there's no lettuce in it. A lot of the salads we make at Clover don't have lettuces. So it's maybe more of a composed salad. But a lot of salads around the world, different cuisines, don't have lettuce. And the idea of salad is lettuce, lettuce is salad, is really a newer idea. And I eat lettuce salads, obviously, but this time of year I don't have lettuce to use. But this is also way more nutritious. So if you want to get a little more vegetables into your meal, you might think about making a salad it's not based on greens. Greens also tend to be not the best environmentally. There's things that are much worse, meat, but nutritionally, you don't get a whole lot of nutrients out of the lettuce for how much space it takes up. how many resources it requires. So if you get an opportunity to eat heartier vegetables, you're probably going to be having a much smaller footprint, and you're going to be eating a lot more nutritious food. And a lot of the farmers I know don't sell a lot of lettuce, so if you want to support New England farmers, salads that are made out of whole vegetables can be a really great way to do that too. We're done with all the things I want to do. I have a little bit of cleanup I have to do. I'm going to just take a peek at these enchiladas and see if they're in a spot I can show them off. And it's getting there. So you can see the cheese is bubbling up. It's really beautiful. I'd probably go a little bit longer, but because the show is over, I'll just pull this out so you can see it a little more closely. So this is something, I may put that back in the oven for another 10 minutes or so. I mean, it's totally edible right now, but I think what I'm aiming at might be cooked a little further than that. So I'll just share with you what we have then for dinner tonight. So we have some black beans. These are from Charlie Bear. These are really beautiful cocoa black beans. It's an heirloom variety. You can see how plump and fat they are. They're like really, really beautiful when they're first soaked in water. Super yummy. They're very, very simple. You can go back and watch one of the previous episodes. There's a little bit of salt with these, a little bit of oil with these, a little bit of dried herbs, but they're very, very simple. There's not a lot there. And then we have a late spring salad with watermelon, radishes, and some onions, red onions, and some cabbage, a little bit of chives. And then we have the enchiladas, which we made with spinach filling today. And so this is going to be our Cinco de Mayo. I hope some of you get to enjoy this at home as well. I'll do one quick check and see if I missed any questions, and then otherwise we'll sign off. And I'm going to be taking a little bit of time off. So we won't be on every day this week at 4 o'clock, but I'll announce on the channel when the next shows are, and hopefully you guys can join us in some of those future episodes. We will be doing future episodes. We're just not going to do them every single day. That's going to give me a little room to do some more planning for the shows. It's also going to let me do a little planning for Opening Clover, because we're starting to get closer to the date for that, believe it or not. All right, I don't think, what type of radish? Okay, so watermelon radish. And that's the only question I see there right now. So thank you everybody for joining us on In Air's Kitchen. I hope you have a really great Cinco de Mayo, and we'll see you sometime soon.